All right, local Tallahassee Big-Bend sports fans, this is Mark Adams. I'm with Four Quarters Online, and I'm joined once again for the Extra Point with my tag team partner, Coach Cofield. Coach, what's going on?
Ain't nothing going on here, Mark, but the rent.
Coach, man, we're in week 10. Can you believe it?
Dang, regular season is over.
Football season, even COVID, that the COVID scare that shortened the season, it still was too short.
Man, it looked like it just started a few minutes ago, and then it's over. It didn't take long, did it?
No, it feels like way every year. But let's not waste anybody's time. Let's go ahead and run down the week number 10 rewind. Let's go ahead and talk about Florida High, undefeated, taking on Walton. Florida High, I mean, they're all gas, no brakes. 64-7. Seminoles used a 50-point first half to cruise to a win. It was really no contest.
Yes, Florida High seemed like the team to beat in this area. It looked like they headed back to the finals again. I think Coach Hickman has done a great job with these kids. I didn't expect this. Maybe he knew. And they beat some pretty good teams this year, like Madison, and they beat Rickards.
Columbia is another one.
Really stepped up, Mark.
Yeah, they're really on the warpath to make it back to state finals. This team is really, they look like they're on a mission. These kids have not forgotten. Anytime you play in the state championship, Coach, you've been there before. It's either sweet victory or bitterness and defeat. And I think these kids remember how things turned out last year, and it looks like they're on a mission.
Yeah, they look like it, man. They really came out this season with a roar, and they just been very consistent all year long. And I look for them to do some great things. But the playoffs has already started. But I look for them to do great things in the playoffs. Look for them to be in the finals and maybe take home this year.
Yeah, just looking at the brackets, they have a very favorable path. Of course, this is why we play the game. Nothing is expected. But when you have Trey Donaldson as your quarterback, I mean, he was 11 of 13, almost perfect, 229 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, they're going to be pretty hard to beat. Kerrion Green also led the defense with 9 tackles, 8 solo, 1 assist, and a sack. And to me, it seems like on defense, they have different guys stepping up each week. They really look like the team to beat, not only in their class, but also in the area.
Well, I think they proved that during the regular season. They played everybody. They didn't dodge anyone. And I think that helps you in the playoff when you play quality competition through the year. I still say one thing about playing in that 3A, you got teams down south with a lot of different transfers from bigger schools, and you got to play against probably what you call an all-star team from down south to win the whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So they look like they're in great shape. Let's go across town. Lincoln takes on Gabi in a classic matchup. It always is a wild finish every year, and this one was no different. Lincoln was in control for most of the early points of the ball game, but Gabi mounted a comeback but fell short. Lincoln takes this one 36-32. Gabi falls to 3-3 on the year, while Lincoln is 5-1 on the first-year head coach BJ Daniels. Man, Lincoln looks like they're playing their best ball right now. Perry Fisher threw for 214 yards and was 13-20 passing. And man, we got to talk about this kid, David Monroe. 3 for 3 on field goals, including a 47-yarder. And Coach, I saw that kick, and it's still, I mean, it could have gone on for another maybe 10, 15 yards. It was still going up when he went through the uprights.
Man, when you got a kicker, it changes your whole offensive thought process, and it really changes the other opponent's team, the opponent's thought process. They know they got to keep you out of certain areas, keep you from having points. And Lincoln is dangerous when they get inside the red zone, especially.
Yeah, absolutely. When you take a look at how this team is built, I mean, you know, for the most part, we saw them in their opening game, I think against Rickards, where they're still trying to put the pieces together. And each week they've just gotten better and better and better, especially on the inside. We talked about they have their offensive line is just really, really dominating in the trenches. Giving the quarterback time, and it shows because Perry Fisher, he drops back and he's got some time to be able to find receivers and pick teams apart. They got plenty of weapons all over the field, so they look good going into the first round of the playoffs. We'll have to take some time later on in our next segment to talk about that. But meanwhile, on the other side of football, Chase Gillespie could not be ignored. 156 yards on the ground and 3 touchdowns. Unfortunately, it was a losing effort, but Gabi still in decent position moving forward as they go into the playoffs. But, man, this was just another classic battle, and this one went the Trojans' way.
Man, Cougars, came on. They started off slow. Lincoln got a big lead. Cougars came roaring back. Just came up a little short. Had opportunities all through the game, and I'm sure they wish they had played better in the first half. They might have been able to pull it out, but they struggled at the end. They did some great things, and maybe they fixed some things out going into the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll check on that in our next segment, but let's go ahead and let's talk about Rutgers linking up with Childs. Raiders take this one in dominating fashion, 35-10 over the Timberwolves. Raiders used 28 points in the second half, just kind of cruised to a win. Michael Townsend, there's that man again, threw for 170 yards and 2 touchdowns, and he did not need a fourth quarter comeback to prove himself in this game. 2 touchdowns, throw in the air, and also ran for another score. And let's go on the other side of football. Travion Riles led all defenders with 14 tackles, 2 sacks, and 2 tackles for a loss, and a fumble recovery. He was all of that. He was a 4-course meal in that night. He was eating, and you could tell that the Raider defense did not let up, and they were led by that man over there at the linebacker position, and he's just had an awesome season.
Yeah, Mark, the one thing you say about the Raiders this year is they played pretty good defense, and really defense wins games when you can stop the opponent, keeping them from scoring, and you have opportunity on offense to figure things out. That's a great advantage when you're not worrying about keeping up with the score up and down the field. When a player like Riles coming along making plays all over the place, makes your team exceptional, dangerous in the playoffs too.
Yeah, absolutely. Meanwhile, FAMU High travels over to NFC at Eagle Field, and Eagles all the time, 41-20 over their rival, and really it was close in the first half, and then NFC too much. Jonathan Lucas and DeAndre McCray. Especially in the second half, both running backs went over 100 yards. Lucas had 118 and 1 touchdown, and then DeAndre McCray, we've been talking about this kid all year, had 101 yards and 2 touchdowns, respectively. And man, NFC, they have so many weapons all over the field, but when you can hand the ball off to one of these 2 guys and they just go make plays, it's really hard to get. It's really hard to take them down when they've hit their stride.
Mark, that means that front line is doing the job. They've been exceptional all year long. And I think one of the leaders on that line is J.T. Price. They make holes, and if you got 2 running backs with over 100 yards, your offensive line is really dominating.
Yeah, absolutely. Price also led the defense with 17 tackles, 3 tackles for a loss, and 3 sacks. Hard to ignore, but really the entire NFC defense is just stifling. I've watched them play. These kids fly to the football, and really for Coach Price, he really talked about how it begins in the offseason in the weight room, and it shows. They're one of the strongest offensive line units that we've seen in the area, and on the defensive line as well. So NFC takes that one 41-20 over FAMU High. Eagles are going into the playoffs with a 4-2 record. Meanwhile, our friends down in Crawfordville went out in the Panhandle and took on Fort Walton Beach. The Wakulla War Eagles were able to down the Vikings 35-24, and they were led by Jakari Irvin. Running back had 138 yards on the ground on 7 carries and 2 touchdowns for the War Eagles. And also Zamarian Smith had 103 yards on the ground with 6 carries, just 6. Touched the ball 6 times, had 103 yards and 2 touchdowns. So War Eagles found their groove on the ground, and they were able to take that one and quietly, very quietly, Wakulla's put together a 7-1 campaign, and they're flying high into the playoffs. Well,
no stranger to success down in Wakulla. Coach Scott has done a great job. You see the War Eagles are always in the hunt, and they travel well. They play well on the road. I think they only got 1 loss this year. And they're getting ready, prepping up for the playoffs. And I think they got a great chance of making it to the finals with this team.
Yeah, there's nothing lost from last year's team. I think everybody remembers that overtime thriller against Jones, and these kids are still hungry. And, the best of luck to them as they go into the playoffs. It is anybody's game as we go into the postseason, but Wakulla certainly looks good, and they're battle-tested. They played a heck of a schedule. They played top team in 1A, 6A, and a couple of 7A schools, and they fared pretty well. So Wakulla going into the playoffs, and also got to talk about this young man, linebacker Kanye Westfield, led all defenders again for the second week in a row with 14 tackles, 7 solo, 7 assists, and 2 sacks. So they've got some kids on both sides of the ball that are going to be making plays, and so War Eagles looking good going into the playoffs. Meanwhile, out in Jacksonville, playing game for the Monroe Bobcats, huge contest. And really for Monroe, just uncharted waters, and it just was not their night. They fall to University Christian 42-0. And historic season just comes to an end.
Yeah, it's kind of, I know it's a great regular season, a sad ending. You didn't even get a chance to put any points on the board and probably played one of their worst games all season long. But hey, they still had a great season, undefeated, first time in school history. Shout out to the Monroe Bobcats.
Yeah, Coach Alex Leckey did a great job this season. And really, those kids, they played their butts off with the schedule that they had. And they're only going to get better from here. They're going to that schedule's going to get beefed up, obviously. And then for the most part, you know, you go into everybody goes into tough environments on the road, and facing a seasoned team like University Christian, who has been to the mountaintop, I think it provides great inspiration for Monroe as to where they want to be in the future. So unfortunately, a tough loss, but a lot to build on for the Monroe Bobcats on a great season. Let's go ahead and check on our friends Kyler Hall and company and the Swanee Bulldogs take down Baker in a heck of a ball game, 35-32. Swanee comes away with the victory, and they're 7-2 on the year. They completed the comeback win with a 13-point fourth quarter, and then shut out Baker in the fourth, just with stifling defensive effort. And Swanee's another team that you're really going to have to keep your eye on.
Yeah, usually a pretty good team is Coach Kyler Hall's got his kids rolling, but it's going to be tough. You got Rickards, you got Wakulla, and they're in that same district, region, or whatever. I don't know how they're doing it in the playoffs this year, but it's going to be tough. One of those teams is not going to get where they want to go, but hey, awesome season for all of them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Swanee is one of the more battle-tested teams. You go into a tough environment, which they've done twice and pulled out excellent wins. And they also handed Wakulla their only loss on the season. So this team is going to be one of the teams that you definitely got to keep your eye on. Meanwhile, Point St. Joe falls to Baker in a tough loss, 39-7 in the Sunshine Athletic Conference Championship game. Fell to an undefeated Baker team that really is one of the top-notch teams in 1A, along with Vernon. And then, despite the loss, wide receiver Dakota Quinn had 146 all-purpose yards and a touchdown. And on defense, Jacob Hopper and Trayton Dockery each had 12 tackles apiece. So still lots to be handled on the Port St. Joe side as they go into the playoffs with an 8-2 record, no slouch themselves. But I think they saw the team that they're going to have to beat if they want to advance to the finals in the 1A. Or at least in the 1A classification. So we'll definitely be seeing more of the Sharks in the playoffs, and hopefully they'll be able to learn from that, make some adjustments, and put together a run.
Yeah, Mark, they had an exceptional season also. It's kind of funny that some of these schools are going around, they cope with all these problems they have, and having to come out with an 8-2 record is pretty good. I think that if you watch the playoffs, I think teams are just getting in their stride, and you're going to play better as the season goes on. And I think with the problems we had this year in the state of Florida, it's exciting that these teams made it to the final game.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a point in time we weren't even sure we were going to have football.
I'm looking forward to the playoffs. I think it's going to be exceptional. Some good teams are going to get left behind. And I think the playoffs is going to be the most exciting part of the whole season.
Yeah, absolutely. Taylor kind of gets a dominating first-round win over winless Franklin, 38-0. And really for the Bulldogs, that was kind of just what the doctor ordered. They needed kind of a rebound to put their season at 500 with a 4-4 record. So they'll enter the playoffs on an up note. On an upswing. And, for the Bulldogs, it's kind of, certain things come at the right time, and so I think they'll use that momentum going into the postseason. Let's check on some other area scores. Fort Wright downs Hamilton County 14-6. Bluntstown beats Gratesville 36-6. Bay jumps all over Rutherford 52-22, and Mariana downs Chipley 35-12. And that'll do it for the regular season and the play-in games as well. So we've got our playoff bracket set. And Coach, we'll have to take our next segment and break down what we're going to see on Friday night as the playoffs get started for the first round for everybody across the state. And so I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, me too, Mark. Exceptional time. Everybody gets to play. I like the way they got the playoffs this year. Everybody gets in, and no excuses. You either win or go home.
Yeah, I definitely think we'll see some surprises this year. So that'll do it for the 4Q Rewind. We'll catch everybody in our next segment.